Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and thank you for tuning in to Penguin Live TV. My name is Stephen, and I'm going to be your host this evening. And tonight, my co host is me. I'm by myself tonight, so I'm going to do my best to answer all of your questions. I won't be able to read them all because I'm going to be focusing on the Penguins tonight. That's my main mission, is to make sure you guys have an amazing show to watch. So, in case you wondering why I'm not answering as many questions tonight, I am sorry about that, but I'm going to do my best to tune over to YouTube and to Facebook and try and see your questions. Hopefully, I'll get to be able to answer a few of them this evening. Now, looking over this beautiful peninsula tonight, we have our two penguin counters who are here as well. We have Paul and Linda who are out on the stand getting ready to welcome our penguins home. And it's hopefully going to be another wonderful evening with lots and lots of little penguins coming home. And as we're looking over this lovely scape, this lovely view, I do want to take this moment to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Bunurong Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, both past, present, and emerging. And ladies and gentlemen, as I'm scanning across, you might notice that the tide is really far out tonight, which is exciting. It means we get to see more of the penguins crossing the beach, or I should say, we get to see them for a longer time, which will be a lot of fun. So there's a lot more for us to watch this evening. When it's a high tide, they get washed up on the shore, they get bashed onto the rocks, they're already halfway home. But these guys, they've got a long trek ahead of them, and they'll be pausing on the beach. So hopefully we'll be able to watch them for a little bit longer. I'm very excited about that. So hopefully you guys are excited to tune in as well. And I do want to say a big welcome back to all of our regular viewers. I know a lot of people have been tuning in night after night watching these little penguins coming home. It's so heartwarming to know that so many of you are enjoying this exhibit that we have going on. And once we're able to open up to Melbourne and to the rest of the world, we hope that you'll come and visit us in the future because this is a site well worth watching. As it stands right now, we're only open to regional Victoria uh, during the weekends. There's very limited capacities going on right now due to this pandemic, but we're looking forward to everything returning back to a bit of normalcy, and we'll be able to open our doors up to a few more people to see our penguins. Now, here at the Penguin Parade, we're part of the Phillip Island Nature Parks. We are a self-funded and not-for-profit organization. We used to be self-funded back before the pandemic started. Now, without the tourism to help fund us, we have had to rely on the government for a bit of assistance to get us through. A big thank you to them for supporting us during these difficult times. But we are still not-for-profit, and all of the monies we do make from the sales of tickets um, generally does go back into our conservation work. And that goes towards helping our penguins in their habitat, doing a lot of revegetation, a lot of weed removal, all of that vital stuff that's important in giving our penguins a safe place to live. But we're not focused only on our penguins. We take care of almost 20% of Phillip Island, roughly 1,800 hectares of land. It's a very large area we take care of, and it includes all of the native species that you might find here on Phillip Island. And it also includes a very special species, our little eastern barred bandicoot. These guys are critically endangered. I've been dying to get a taxidermy of one of these to show you what they really look like, but this is a very good representation. It's roughly the right size. And these guys, at their lowest, got down to roughly 20 adults left in the world in the Melbourne Zoo. And they started up a breeding program to help bring back their numbers. And we have brought them here onto Phillip Island because we have a fox-free island right here. And that's given these guys a really good chance at coming back from the verge of extinction. So hopefully we may be able to see one of these bandicoots on our live feed one of these evenings. I know that several guests have spotted them out in the colony when they've been wandering along our boardwalks, and their numbers seem to be doing really, really well out here, which is fantastic to see. I'm lucky enough to go out with a few of our rangers to help trap the bandicoots, make sure they're doing all right, give them a health check. Their breeding season seems to be coming somewhat to a close. And I was lucky enough to see two little joeys in the pouch of one of our bandicoots here, which was just a phenomenal experience. Well, maybe if we'll get lucky, we'll see some more tonight. But that's some of the work we do here. We take care of not only our penguins, but any other animals that need protection here on Phillip Island, the native animals anyways. And we do our best to get rid of all those pests like foxes or feral cats that cause more harm than good to the environment. As I'm scanning around, I am trying to keep an eye out for a raft of penguins out there. It's really hard to see them. Maybe you can let me know in the comments if you've spotted any. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit just to see if we'll spot any. Ooh, I zoomed in a lot. They're really hard to see on this choppy water, so keep your eyes open. And as I'm scanning around for these rafts of penguins, that's a group of penguins out on the ocean that have started gathering up into large numbers, attempting to cross this beach with the safety of numbers and under the cover of darkness. Now, our penguins here are called the little penguins. They're the smallest penguins in the world. They're only about 33 centimeters tall. That's roughly a foot in height, and they weigh just over, oh sorry, around a kilogram or just over 2 pounds. On average, they can be varying as all things do in nature. Man, I cannot see any penguins out here on the ocean. I'm sure they're out there. The water's just a little too choppy to spot them. But because our penguins are the smallest in the world, they're also the only penguins that come home at nighttime only, which is a bit interesting. All the other species of penguins that we can find here on planet Earth will come out day or night. It doesn't matter to them. But our penguins, they have to wait until nighttime because in the daytime, there are predators. And those predators are big birds of prey. Any large animal that eats small little animals for food, any large bird that eats small animals for food is probably going to have penguin on its menu. And our penguins are really clever. They've learned that they're not the best suited for waddling around on land. They're quite slow. They trip over their own feet. They would be very, very much exposed if they came onto land in the daytime. They would be the easiest targets those predators could find. So our penguins are pretty clever. They know that they should only come home when the sun's gone down. And that's exciting for us because we know roughly when our penguins are due to show up, and they come home in large numbers. And so we keep our eye out on the water's edge, trying to see if any penguins are coming because the sun has set. It's starting to get darker and darker. But as you're looking at the screen, there's still quite a bit of brightness around. Our penguins usually start showing up roughly half an hour after sunset. So as it gets darker and darker, more and more penguins are going to start swimming towards this water's edge, and we'll see if we spot any coming home. Right now, all I'm seeing along this beach are those silver gulls. Those little white dots running around, the silver gulls are native here to Phillip Island. They're not going to bother our penguins too much. Oh, is that some penguins washing up there? Or am I imagining things? I'm just imagining things. I'm hoping I see some penguins. Our silver gulls do not bother our penguins. They are more scavengers than anything else. They're not here to attack our penguins. They certainly don't eat penguins. You might see some Pacific gulls, larger variants of the gull family. They might be predators of little penguins, but they don't like going after full-blown adults. Our adult penguins can get quite feisty. So the silver gulls, they prefer to go after the chicks. Our penguins are pretty good parents. They should be at home they should be at home taking care of their chicks. And it's only once the chicks get to a certain age that mom and dad leave them at home for the first time. And they only do that because those chicks are getting very hungry. And both mom and dad need to go out into the ocean and find as much food as they can and feed those hungry tummies as often as they can. Oh, what do I see over here on these rocks? Might be a few penguins, or is that seagulls? Oh, look, we found our first penguins hanging out on the water's edge in these rocks. Paul hasn't spotted these penguins yet. He hasn't called penguins at the water's edge over the radio. Oh, come on, guys, let's get you to focus. All right, that's not too bad. There we go. So these guys are hiding on the dark seaweed-covered rocks. Their dark backs, or the dark blue backs, blend in very well to the rocks. If you're a bird of prey looking up from above, you're going to see some dark feathers on a dark background. Just like the dark ocean below them gives them very nice camouflage. And there's a few just huddling around here in the seaweed right on the shore. There's not many of them here, so they're looking a little bit cautious to me. Now, I am looking at some of the questions here, and One person asked us how far, so I think it's Colleen Morfoot, asked how far does a penguin go when they go fishing? And the general answer to that is they'll go as far as they need to find a nice school of fish. They're not going to travel a specific distance in order to hopefully find some fish. As soon as they see a nice school of fish, they're going to stop and they're going to start chasing it around. Lots of tiny fish, get as much as they can before they go along. But we have found that the farthest our penguins will swim in a day is roughly 50 kilometers, and that's a very, very big day for our penguins. So usually wouldn't see them going any farther than that. During the breeding season, the food source should hopefully be closer to land, so our penguins don't have to swim too far away and leave their babies hungry for longer. And they might swim maybe 30 kilometers on a good breeding season out into the ocean to catch their fish. But on a bad breeding season, which we had a couple of seasons ago, our food source was way far away in the ocean. They had to swim almost 80 kilometers one way to find their food. And then they'd have to swim that 80 kilometers back home to bring it home to their babies. It was a bad breeding season because the babies went very, very hungry. A lot of underweight babies that year. A good year is when we see lots of fat, happy, fluffy chicks in the colony. Well, these penguins don't seem too keen to come out just yet. It's still quite early. There's quite a bit of sunlight and the tide is very low. I am expecting a slightly later start tonight. Last night the penguins came out at 8:09, which is a bit later than we usually see over the last few weeks. But I'd be putting my money on a similar start time, maybe even a little bit later, because that sky is pretty clear and it is still very, very bright. So unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, you're here stuck with me watching the beautiful scenery, and you'll have to wait for our penguins to show up. We cannot rush them. We don't get to tell them what to do. They will come when they are ready. And just look at how much beach they have to cross tonight. That is a monumental trek for our little penguins. That is quite a large beach that they have to cross. And that's the most dangerous part of our penguins' day is crossing this beach. You saw that our penguins have those dark feathers on the back and the white feathers on their belly. That is really good camouflage in the ocean. Because if you're a bird of prey looking down at a dark blue ocean and you see dark blue feathers hiding a penguin on those dark blue oceans, you might not see the penguins at all. You might not realize that they are there. And on the flip side, if you're a seal and you're diving under the water and you're looking upwards towards the sky, if you've ever gone scuba diving or gone diving in the ocean and you look back up towards the sky, you notice you got this blindingly bright background, almost a white background. And if you've got those white feathers on a white background, those penguins are going to be hard to see from both sides. So our penguins are really well camouflaged on the ocean. But when it comes on to landing on this beach, they're standing up against that waves there. So any potential ground-based predators are going to see those white feathers on that dark blue ocean behind them. And any predators from above are going to notice those dark blue feathers on the bright yellow sand below them. The camouflage is working against them on the sand, which makes crossing the beach the most dangerous part of a penguin's life. And they do this several times. I shouldn't say several times. They should do this every time they come home, and they'll do this many, many times in their life. So every time they do, it's best to be safe, especially when you have such a large beach like this to cross. So let's not rush our penguins. I want to make sure they all get home safe and sound tonight. Because my goodness, look at how big that beach is. Not often we get a tide this low here at the Penguin Parade. And our rangers are getting patiently waiting out there. We have Linda on the stands there. And Paul is in the skybox. He's got a lucky job tonight because it's such a low tide. He's got a much longer time to count our penguins. Now, I'm expecting our penguins to start coming at the water's edge very soon. It's getting quite dark. This is the time of day that our penguins are ready to start crossing the beach. Or at least consider it. Oh, did I see some penguins down there? Let me try zooming in. Sometimes I imagine penguins, sometimes I see them. Yeah, there's a few penguins down there. Wonderful. Not many though. I doubt these penguins are going to be brave enough to cross the beach. There's only, 5 or 6 of them down there. That's not a large grouping at all. Look at them running back in already, quite frightened of how bright it is. Sometimes our penguins are quite eager to get home. They know they have some hungry babies waiting for them at home. Maybe they've left their significant other at home too long and they're worried that the neighbors are going to move in and pounce on them. Our penguins are definitely eager to get home at this time of year for a variety of reasons. But if you're a little penguin, it's not safe to cross the beach until you are ready. I did see one question on the comments asking if there's a way to adopt our penguins here, and you can do a symbolic adoption of our penguins. Just click the link that we have in our description for the Penguin Foundation. That is our charity organization, and they have an Adopt a Penguin program or by becoming a Penguin Pal program. There's lots of ways you can donate. If you wanted to adopt one of our penguins symbolically, that would go, all the money you give to do that adoption would go into helping our Penguin Foundation, and that money might go towards our wildlife clinic, where we have a lot of sick and injured animals who are in desperate need of being taken care of. And I do know that one of our guests recently, who drove around this beautiful Summerlands Peninsula, found some abandoned duckling chicks on the side of the road, roughly 10 or so ducklings. They called our hotline number. The gate rangers went out. They picked them up, took them in a big blue box to our Penguin Foundation. Those duckling chicks were taken care of by us. They had been abandoned by their parents for whatever reason it may have been. But ducklings are very interesting, is that you can foster them in any other family. As soon as they're old enough to waddle around and get on the move, other parents are usually really willing to adopt those ducklings and take them under their wing. And that's what we found was another parents. Parents were out in the wild and we took the ducklings to them and they all started merging together as one big happy family. So just think, you might be helping to bring some animals to a slightly different type of adoption if you do donate to our Penguin Foundation. All right, I'm looking at the questions again. And Roaming Crow has asked, have we ever seen any predators attack the penguins in the past? And yes, we have. It's not a common occurrence. Usually there's a lot of people on the stands making a lot of noise, which will generally put off most predators. But I have seen Pacific gulls dive bombing our penguins. I've never seen any of our predators take a penguin that was crossing the beach, but I have seen them harassing them, scaring them, dive bombing them, looks like they're trying to take them home. So this is something that does happen here at the Penguin Parade. This is a wildlife reserve. All of the animals here are wild, and nature can be quite cruel. So sometimes you do see predators grabbing our little penguins, but it's just the circle of life. These penguins are a food source to other animals, and it is important that all animals have a chance at eating. Even though we may have our own personal favorites of animals we cheer for, like that night we had the Cape Barren goose, the mama goose, protecting her babies as the penguins were encroaching on that pathway and getting a little too close. If you haven't seen that video, check our Facebook page. It's a really popular video, lots of views that night. And I believe most people were on Team Penguin that night. I was personally on Team Mama Goose, even though the Mama Goose was in a pretty poorly chosen spot to rest for the evening. I'll always support a mom protecting her babies. Those penguins can find another pathway home as far as I'm concerned. Just because they're stubborn and they don't like taking a side road detour doesn't mean I think they should be harassing any babies. But that's all right, you're allowed to have your personal favorites and I'll have mine. All right. Well, Candace is asking a difficult question. How many bones do the penguins have? And I did learn this statistic fairly recently, about a month ago. It was over 200. This is going to drive me crazy. I'm going to say roughly 218 bones. I might be off by a little bit there. Sometimes I'm really good at remembering numbers. Other times they just leave my head just like that. but roughly that many bones. They have quite a few bones in their bodies. All of them are very important. There's a few more penguins at the water's edge here. Now, this is another small group. I don't think these guys are going to be wanting to cross either. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 penguins, I believe. It's a bit tricky to spot them, but remember, I'm going to be asking you guys to count the penguins. Hopefully the first biggest group that we get crossing our beach tonight. Because it's a tricky job counting those penguins as they scurry around, moving at different speeds and tripping over each other's feet. It's often a fun job trying to count penguins. I personally love counting them when the beach is so low, or sorry, when the tide is so low, when there's so much beach to see. It gives me a second chance and even a third chance to count them. And very rarely do I get all three of my counts the exact same number. They're usually within 2 or 3 of each other. So yeah, I try and get the average between all three counts when I do that. Somebody has been asking how long are we going to be doing our Penguin Live TV? And that's an interesting question. We're going to keep going as long as it's popular, is the general understanding I have. For the time being, we'll be going right through the month of November, and we'll see if we keep going beyond that. It has been a lot of fun doing this, and it'll be interesting to see how long we keep it going. I would love to be in front of you guys every night, showing off the penguins, helping you enjoy your evenings that much more. But if you want to see it keep going, don't feel shy. Feel free to write in and let us know how much you enjoy it. Because there's another group of penguins. Because the managers have been reading a lot of these messages, and they've been very heartened by the positive response we've had in our Penguin Live TV. All right, a fairly small group here on the water's edge. They're not feeling too brave either. They're definitely hesitating on that water's edge. That's all right. That just means that they have a better chance at crossing the beach safely tonight. Oh, looks like they're getting thinking about waddling. You never know with these penguins. We don't start our official penguin count until the first group of penguins has crossed at least halfway across the beach, sometimes 3/4 of the way across the beach. We like to call that the point of no return. Once a penguin gets beyond a certain distance, that if a predator does swoop them, they're more likely to run towards the end of the beach, towards the sand dunes and the bushes for safety, than they are to run back into the water. And there's nothing more frustrating than counting a really large group and then seeing them all run back towards the ocean, or maybe a quarter of them run back to the ocean and you have no idea how many are left. So we try and hold off on getting that really official count in until our penguins have crossed the majority of the beach and we know exactly how many are getting ready to come. So last night we had lots of penguins coming in. A few people have been wondering how many penguins have been coming in night after night. And last night the start time was 8:09 p.m. and we had a total of 2,455 penguins, which is a pretty good number this time of year. So hopefully we get a similar number tonight. We've had a couple of nights over 3,000 penguins, but we never know exactly how many penguins are going to be coming home on a given night. And that's because our penguins can sleep on the ocean and they cross the beach whenever they feel like it. As long as they have a full tummy, they might consider crossing the beach, but if they're hungry, they're not going to be coming home because a hungry penguin is not going to find any food on land. All of their food is out on the ocean. Our penguins can't sleep on the ocean, so there's no need for them to come home. The only real need that our penguins have for coming home is at this time of year, there's likely babies in the colony, and if they have babies waiting for them, they are definitely invested in their well-being and they want to make sure their babies get as much food as they can. Because a fat baby is a healthy baby. All righty, we got two groups thinking of crossing right now. There's one at the back and there's one in the rocks. Now, almost always penguins like to join up their groups. These are not groupings of families or hunting parties. These are just groupings of convenience. They're looking to cross the beach with the safety of numbers. And the more penguins there are in a group, the safer they are and the safer they feel. We'll see if those two decide to show up. That back group has got a long trek ahead of them. They better get power walking, power waddling if they want to catch up. Now, don't worry, it's just the first group that's coming out. It's still very bright outside. Just because the first group is a small group does not mean that we're going to have small numbers all round. These guys might just be the scouting party. And a few of the wiser penguins, the more cautious penguins that are still out in the ocean, if they're clever, they'll be watching these penguins, making sure that they're crossing the beach in safety. They are keeping an eye out for predators, and they want to see if these penguins get swooped by a hungry bird of prey. And if any of them do, you can rest assured that those penguins out in the ocean are probably not going to be rushing out of the water. They would rather wait a little bit longer, make sure that they come home in the safety of darkness. All right, let's zoom in on these guys. Looks like they're definitely crossing. I'm keeping an ear on the radio. I've got a radio to Paul. He's going to let me know when the penguins really start crossing. He hasn't called a start to the evening yet, so he feels there's still a chance that these penguins might run back into the water. And they certainly haven't crossed half the beach just yet, but they're getting towards it. And I reckon as soon as he hit these rocks here, I reckon he's going to call a start. I'll have to keep my ear open and let you know if he does. Oh, yep. There he goes. He just called it, as I said. 8:16 starts tonight, which is good 7 minutes later than last night. Now, what's going to happen as the days get longer and longer? The penguins might start coming in later and later in the evening. All of you who started watching us when we were in the middle of dinner time, it's definitely after dinner time now. And even later in the year, when we get to the December month, these penguins won't be coming out of the ocean until after 9 o'clock. You can get very light night shows on those evenings. Wonderful. All right, I'm going to try zooming in on these penguins again. The camera always struggles a little bit when I'm zoomed in so far. Looks like it's doing not too bad right now. So this group is a fairly small group. Well, I don't know, 10 to 15, maybe 15 or so penguins in that group at a quick glance. That's a nice easing into the penguin count for Paul. All right. So I'm getting another question. This one's from Fiona. And she's asking, how old can the penguins live up to? Now the penguins, our oldest penguin was 26 years old. That was a very, very old penguin. That's the oldest penguin we've ever had here on record. But on average, our penguins don't live that long. They usually last around 7 or so years is their average. And the first 2 years of a penguin's life are the most challenging. So our penguins will bring their average right down for the life expectancy when you don't survive those first 2 or 3 years. But if they can survive those first few years, you can expect them to live probably quite a bit longer than that. Once that, just learning how to fish for themselves, how to survive when the food is a bit more scarce, is very tricky for our penguins, because when they're in the ocean, they're very much solitary. So they don't really have hunting parties that coordinate their hunting. I think Paul may have said there's a large group that it's coming. I'm going to zoom in. Wow, it's really gotten dark quickly. There we go. It's no nice having this radio in my ear. I get all the background information. So I got you guys to count these penguins coming across the beach tonight, right here. Let me know how many are in the comments. And I will let you know once Paul radios through his final count of this group. That's quite a lot. That's a tricky group for Paul to count. He's going to wait for them to stretch out, make sure no more penguins join this mass that have crossed the beach. Wow, that's fantastic. So for all of you doubters who are wondering why we're having such small groups tonight, here we go. We've got a nice large group for you right now. and is a lot of fun to see. All right, let's see if I can spot any other comments. Oh, one's wondering what happens to the chicks. So Verity is wondering if one parent is predated upon while fishing, will the remaining parent continue to raise the chicks? And the parent will always try and raise the chicks. And it depends how old the chicks are when one of them is lost in the ocean. If they are very young chicks, it's going to be incredibly difficult for a single parent to raise their babies to adulthood. If they're lucky, they might be able to raise one, but it doesn't seem likely that that would ever be the case. But if their chicks are quite old and almost ready to go into the ocean already, and they only have to keep them alive for a couple of weeks, then, or maybe just a week, then there's a good chance that they'll be able to raise them as a single parent. It's much harder for our penguins to raise babies by themselves because these babies eat a lot of food. They grow very, very quickly, so they have to be fed constantly. The time frame for when a baby is hatched to when they leave the burrow is roughly 2 months. 9 weeks is roughly the average of how long it takes for the baby to be born, if you will, or to hatch, and then to leave their home and head into the ocean on their own. But because they're growing so fast, it does take a lot of food. Wow, look at the size of this group of penguins. This is a massive waddle. I'd say there's easily over 100 here, but I haven't been counting them. It's not my job to count them tonight. I've been asking you guys to count them, and I'll be radioing Paul to see how many are in this group. So do your best. I'm going to keep the camera still for you so you have a chance to count how many penguins are in this group. What a wonderful evening. It's so fun seeing how many penguins are coming home on a given night. It also gives me a chance. I'm going to try and read some more comments just to see if there's any good questions. So Kate Rose is wondering, what do little penguins look for in a mate? Well, the males are the ones who have to try and attract a mate. They're the ones who have built their burrows, and they stand outside their burrows singing songs of courtship and trying to impress the ladies. And I like to think that penguins are basically looking for a big, attractive mate. A skinny penguin is not a healthy penguin. It's a malnourished penguin. But a penguin who's got a lot of mass to them has shown that they are healthy. And our penguins, they don't get fat because they are out in the ocean and they're swimming maybe 50 kilometers a day, which is a lot of work. They're constantly working out, so they're bulking up. And while I wouldn't say our penguins look like bodybuilders, they definitely have a lot of muscles to them, even if they are looking a little chubby. All right, hopefully you've had a good chance at seeing how many penguins are in that group. I'm going to zoom out. They've just scattered among those rocks. That's going to be tricky for Paul. I'm scared to ask him over the radio how many are in that group because he might still be counting them for the third time. And he wants to make sure he gets the numbers right because I'm sure a few of you eagle-eyed viewers out there might be criticizing his numbers if he gets it wrong. All right, they're just clambering over the rocks right now, which is fantastic to see. But going back to that question, what do penguins look for in a mate? Basically, they want to make sure that their mate is healthy, fairly large in size. The males will be standing outside of their burrows, calling to all the ladies going by, saying, "Ladies, look at me. I'm a big, fat, sexy penguin. Come join me for the night." And the ladies are basically window shopping as they're wandering through the colony. They get to pick and choose their partner for the year. And it's basically one female and one male will stay together and raise their chicks together. Look at them just scrambling over these rocks. The little waterfall is still present, but it's definitely diminished. And our pool is still here, but you can see it's definitely shrunk down in size. We've been so lucky to have this pool during pretty much our whole live streaming timeline so far. It's bound to disappear. But luckily for us, it's a La Nina year, which means it's a wetter, cooler summer, which is perfect for our penguins. We may get lucky and see this pool coming back. We never know. That's up to nature. But don't be surprised when it does disappear, because for most of the year, that pool does not exist. Love them just scrambling. All right, I'm going to radio Paul because I want to know how many penguins are in that first group. This is Stephen to Paul. Can you tell me how many penguins are in that first group, please? All right, let's listen in and see. Well, he reckons there's about 300, but he's busy counting another group, so he couldn't remember the exact number. All right, let's try and show you this waddle of penguins going past the screen. So he said around 300. We might get a more accurate count later when there's not another large group crossing the beach and giving him grief. And I love watching these guys waddling past this close up. And we want to see everybody back here as soon as we can, because on the top left of that screen, you'll be seeing a Penguins platform where if you've been tuning in night after night, you may have seen a few people sitting around those edges watching the penguins walking under. All right, Paul has just let me know that there's another group of penguins coming up around this area, so I'm just going to zoom back out, slowly pan across. Hopefully we'll see them. Well, there's another nice group. Oh, there they are, all the way down at the water's edge and in the rocks right there. I'm going to look at the ones at the water's edge first, because that is another massive group. The camera really does struggle to focus with such poor lighting, and our beach lights, they definitely don't reach all the way down to the water's edge when it's so far away. Gotta love these large groups night after night. During our summer months, we might get a total number of penguins that's roughly the same size as this one group you see in front of you. So during our winter months, we might get those smaller groups. But during our summer months, and we're slowly starting to creep towards our summer months here, it's starting to feel more and more like summer day after day. The weather's getting warmer and warmer, and the penguin numbers are just thriving. They're loving this early breeding season right now, and it seems to be going fairly successfully so far. Sometimes we'll get an early breeding season where the penguin numbers will be really high at the start, and then they'll suddenly drop if the elements turn on them or the food source gets too far away and they can't really raise their chicks. Maybe their eggs are at home and they think, "Whoa, it's just not going to work if these eggs hatch," and they might abandon their eggs. Paul is having a hard time counting these penguins. He says there's roughly 270 penguins in this group, and it keeps getting bigger is what he says. Wow, fantastic. They haven't even crossed the beach yet. Oh my goodness. Well, if that group in the back joins this group in the front, that might just be one single group, and Paul's going to be left counting for a long time. I'll send Paul our love, wish him our best, because that's a lot of penguins. And you can see they're not really going orderly up these rocks either. They've kind of hit the rocks and then they fan out. That makes it much harder for Paul to count, because if they're all in a single file crossing the beach in a nice straight line, our job would be too easy. Wouldn't be hard at all. But penguins are not known for making our jobs easier. Wow, how lucky are we to see so many penguins? This is just fantastic. All right, I'm just having a look at any questions I might see in the comments quickly. Lots of people wondering, how do we count them so fast? Each ranger has our own technique. I personally like to choose a spot on the beach, a nice landmark, maybe where a nice visible rock is, and I'll count the penguins as they cross that threshold. And if they're very wide, I might count 5 penguins at a time. And if the group numbers are absolutely massive, well into the hundreds, 400, maybe 500 penguins crossing at once, I might even do 10 at a time. because I know how many penguins roughly take up, how much space 10 penguins will take up in an area. So I might go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80, 90, 100. Okay, got 100. And that just took me 10 seconds. So we can count them very, very quickly. And while that might not be 100% accurate, it is a good estimate. And when we get such large numbers like this, our researchers are looking for a good estimate, as accurate as we can be, but understanding that we do have a margin for error. All right, let's zoom in on these beautiful penguins. Preening their feathers. I love the way they reach around with their feathers, making sure that they get oil over their beak and spread that oil to their feathers. It's very important that our penguins take care of themselves. A lot of self-love when you're a penguin. It helps them to survive out on the ocean. You can really see them rubbing their feathers, their beaks all across their feathers, kind of waggling their beak back and forth on their chest. This is very typical behavior. And occasionally you'll see penguins taking care of each other as well. You might see another penguin, looks like they're nuzzling a penguin standing next to them, maybe rubbing their beak around their head, around their face, because penguins struggle to get the oil all over their own face. I'm just going to swap the cameras over because I see a couple of shell gritters on this screen. Penguins walking the wrong way. It's not really the wrong way. They are going the right way. They're just going the opposite way of the vast majority of our penguins. The shell gritters are, I like to call them pregnant females. A more accurate way of describing them is females with eggs. So these two ladies have eggs that are developing inside of their bodies. They've just gone off screen there for a bit, but they're returning to the beach to eat the shell grit in the sand. I like to think they've disappeared off the screen. I'll have to pay attention and see if they pop back out again. But we call them shell gritters because they're eating the shell grit in the sand, because developing those eggs inside of their bellies uses up a lot of the calcium they have stored. Eggshells are made up of lots of calcium, and just by developing them, they get that craving for calcium. And so then they go to eat the shell grit in the sand. They're eating lots of little tiny pieces of shell, which are high in calcium, and it's satisfying those pregnancy cravings that they get, because they are desperate to feel that need. They've been depleted of their own calcium stores, so they have to replenish them. And yeah, I'm sure if that our penguins had access to a supermarket, they'd go down and buy some milk instead of eating sand. But unfortunately for penguins, they've never had milk in their lives, so their other source of calcium is eating the sand. All right. I love these guys just getting ready to jump into our pool. The diving board's turned into a high diving board. Ooh, are you going to do it? You look like you might do it. Dive bomb. Oh, it landed on the back of the other penguin, gave him a startle. Ah, that diving board never gets old. This is the only year I've actually seen the diving board here at the Penguin Parade, so I've been loving it, maybe more than most of our viewers have been. You can see them waddling by. I'm going to swap back to the Penguin Highway, watching our penguins on their journey home. Well, this is just fantastic. The shell gritters are still there. Occasionally they get caught up in the large groups wandering back home, wondering if they're going the wrong way and if they should follow them. But eventually they'll keep going towards the beach, making sure they get that shell grit. You really do get to see them waddling from side to side. Some of these penguins are bigger than others. I see a couple of skinny penguins out there, and I see a couple of chubby penguins as well. But most of them do look like a really good size. And that's good, because a healthy penguin is going to have much greater success in raising their babies than a hungry penguin. Because even though parents desperately want to take care of their chicks, if they're struggling to fill enough food for their own bellies, they're going to take care of themselves first. Their highest priority is taking care of their own well-being. And if they've got lots of fat stores or muscle stores in their body, then they might not have to worry too much about taking care of themselves. They might be able to give more to their offspring. Just look at these penguins. It's a non-stop conga line going. What a wonderful, wonderful view. All right, let's head back to the beach, see what's happening over there. Now, we do have roughly 5 minutes left in the count this evening, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm going to ask you to put some last questions in before we wrap up the stream for the evening. I might be able to read another one or two. I'm just going to have a look at the beach and see, yep, there's definitely some penguins out there. My goodness, they're not stopping. Wow. Well, we're having another really solid evening of penguins, which is just fantastic. Uh, I am so happy I get to share this with you guys. So thank you so much for tuning in so far. I do want to ask you to maybe have a donation, look at our donation page, making sure that our penguins can still be taken care of that are in our wildlife clinic, because the donations we get to our Penguin Foundation do help fund our wildlife clinic. And at this time of year, we do get quite a few abandoned chicks that we might find. And we do tend to raise some abandoned chicks into adulthood. And speaking of chicks, I'm going to go look around for some penguin burrows. Excuse my zooming. I don't know actually where the chicks would be right now. I haven't been lucky enough to be down on the stands recently, and I haven't seen any chicks in the colony yet. And I'm sure some of you folks at home, you may have seen some chicks on the live stream already. If you're lucky, I'm not sure if any have been found yet. The grass is so green, so lush, and it's really hard to spot if there are any babies around. We got our typical, oh, what's down here? Are those chicks? Those are chicks. Oh my goodness, my first chicks of the year. And they're all blurry. Come on, guys, get into focus for me. Wow, all right. I cannot tell you how old these chicks are just yet. They're losing a bit of their baby feathers around their beaks, which is one of the first areas they lose their baby feathers. I really need to see the back of the penguin. Those fluffy brown feathers are the baby down feathers that our penguins get. So as they grow older, roughly from 4 weeks onwards, give or take, they'll start losing those feathers around their face. And they'll slowly lose it around the bottom of their tail too, and they'll lose it all up their back. And you can roughly tell the age of a chick by how many adult feathers they have. And usually the last thing we'll see is our penguins will have a little bit of a hood of baby feathers and a scarf of baby feathers. And sometimes they'll have a scarf with a bit of a mohawk down the center. And last but not least, they'll lose the scarf around their neck. That's the last place that the baby feathers stay. Oh, cuties. No parents there yet, but those chicks look like a really healthy size, which is just fantastic. All right. Trying to see if there's any more questions in the comments before I finish off. So I got one question. This is the name I'm going to massacre. I'm sorry, from Sanjana. Sorry for mispronouncing your name. I'm sure I didn't get it right. Who's wondering, do penguins really give pebbles to their partners? And yes, some species of penguins do offer gifts of pebbles to their partners or to potential mates. Our penguins do not care about pebbles. They are completely uninterested. If a male penguin was to give a female penguin a pebble, she would probably see that as a bit of a turnoff. They're not too interested in pebbles, our penguins, but there are other species of penguins who will even fight over the shiniest pebbles. Different mating behaviors for different species. What are you guys doing? Are you having a bit of a squabble here? Oh, that's a chick. Look at that. That's an old chick. So this one on the bottom is geez, that's got to be roughly an 8-week-old penguin. Oh, I can see the baby feathers on the back of its hood. 7 or so weeks, give or take. I'm sure there's a few rangers at home who are going to give me grief for getting my times of how old the babies are wrong. This is a baby chick looking for food from mom and dad, mom or dad. Yeah, there we go. Nice big food taken away, but they're not done yet. They're still hungry. Feed me, the baby's saying. Feed me, I'm still hungry. Mom's saying, no, get away from me. Quit attacking me. All right, you can have a little more of my fish. Now, eventually, mom or dad, I can't tell if this is mom or dad, sorry, they're going to get fed up of all this attention. And they are eventually going to wander away from the baby, maybe wander 10, 20 meters up the hill just so they can relax. Because if mom or dad stays here all night long, this is their life for the night. And for all of you parents at home who might be watching, if you think the kids crying at 2 in the morning is rough, at least they're not climbing out of bed, getting into your bed, and biting your nose looking for food. Might feel like that at times, but these babies are quite large, almost the size of these adults. It'd be like a teenager getting out of bed and punching in your face for you to make them a bowl of soup for the evening. It's a little full on how hungry and how desperate our chicks get for food. And poor mom and dad, they get henpecked, for lack of a better term. They get penguin pecked when they have to raise their babies. All right, that might be a wonderful point to end the stream tonight. A bit of a highlight of mom or dad feeding the chicks. Pretty special viewing this evening, being able to watch our babies grow in front of our eyes. And you can tune in again tomorrow night. I believe I will be working tomorrow night. If not, it'll be Sky, and I'll make sure that we get to see the chicks again tomorrow night. I do want to thank you so much for tuning in this evening. Thank you so much, and I wish you all a wonderful evening. I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.